Raise your voices, raise your glass high. Welcome to the Drink O'Clock Podcast. Let's dive. Oh, grab an old fashioned and join the fray. Raise your spirits, let the music play. From the corner pub to the dance hall floor. Drink O'Clock Podcast, we're ready for more.
All right, we are live. I had a countdown, which is cool. I mean, new software, new me, I guess. I don't. It's not really new. They're forcing me to use it. So here we are with Descript Rooms. Thank you, Descript, for ruining a perfectly good thing. My name's Rob Valincius. I am the host of the Drink O'Clock Podcast, and I have with me Renee Ninneman. Did I say that right again?
You did, yeah.
Good,
yeah.
Awesome. All right. Now, you're the founder of Beyond Tourism. You're also a community radio DJ, which I thought was pretty cool, right? In Nebraska, and you're currently a doctoral student. So welcome to the podcast.
Yes, hi. Thank you for having me. And I do have a drink, so
cheers.
Cheers.
So I like to start every episode of my podcast with kind of a background. You know, who is Renee? What got you to a point now? You know, I know at some point you lived in South Korea, right? So take me up into that point, and then we'll kind of discuss that a little bit, because I think that's part of your origin story, right?
Yeah. I grew up in West Michigan. It was a very homogenous community, and travel wasn't ever really like encouraged or anything like that. So after college, when I was like, I want to go to South Korea, that was sort of kind of a strange thing, and nobody really quite knew what to do with that, including my parents.
Yeah.
And so, I was 22. What do I know? And this was definitely like early days. This was 2004. So early days of like the internet, cell phones weren't a thing. And so it was a very different way of like finding the job, getting interviewed for the job to teach English to kids. And then like I didn't have a cell phone. I flew halfway around the world. My parents, I couldn't confirm with them that I had gotten there. So like they found out like 2 or 3 days later when I was at my job, and I'm like, I should probably like email my parents or something. So that was a journey in and of itself to like get myself abroad. And I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Peace Corps, but like if I had known about the Peace Corps, I would have done the Peace Corps, where you go off to a country for 2 years and you work with the locals to build something in their community together.
Yeah.
But I was really just ready to go out and like explore the world, and that's what I did. So
You didn't want to just hang out in Michigan?
you know, I love Michigan. I mean, I live in Nebraska now, but
Okay.
where I grew up is beautiful. I like it. I still like it. So a lot of people, bash their hometown, and I get that too. But I really did like living in Michigan. So
Where did I drive to in Michigan? I had to drive. So I work in the insurance world, and I had to I had a meeting in Detroit, and then I had to drive. Was it I stayed, I think, in Gay, which I think is like a mining town or something. It was like in between where I needed to go. I basically went from Detroit and had to just drive in a rental all the way up to northern Michigan.
oh, okay. See, okay.
And I
Yeah, I grew
stayed
up in
kind of in the center,
yeah,
somewhere.
I grew up over here on the West Coast.
Okay.
So, but yeah, it's a surprisingly big state with a lot of people. So, and a lot of walks.
Yes, very dense. There's just people everywhere. And
Yes.
it's kind of like PA. So I'm from Philly, and
Mhm.
Philly's just a weird spot because it's a Quaker state. So you could be in the city, and you could drive only about an hour and a half and you'd be in Amish country, which is, I
Yeah.
feel like that's pretty unique. I don't know if there's any other major city like Philadelphia, which is, what, maybe a top 10 city in terms of like population density, where you could go from just a city to like farms and doing, and buggies, and like they don't drive cars, right? So it's like it's a culture shock there, when
Yeah.
and it's not a far distance, and it's kind of I don't know if you could do that in every direction, but it's pretty damn close.
Yeah.
Um, so t-
Interesting.
yeah. It's have you been to Pennsylvania?
A long time ago for a very short amount of time. So I don't really have memories.
Yeah. It's
Like your trip
it's
to Michigan.
it's a unique it's definitely a unique state, because there's just there's a lot of things that would shock you or surprise you in certain spots, especially even in the city of Philadelphia. Now let's get up to that point. So what made you, what was that determining factor? I know at 22 you're a kid, which, by the way, I grew, I'll be 40 this year. It was a pretty cool time that we lived in. I think it was very unique because it was right before cell phones really start to take off, right? And it was that time when you'd have to say to your parents, hey, or they said to you, be home by a certain time so I know you're alive. If they didn't know where you were, they're outside the house, like, Robbie, Renee, like they're yelling for your name and hoping you're like by the house. And that was just the world we lived in. And now I think about it, and I text the wifey when I'm landing, in the plane, like, hey, I'm good, I'm alive, we landed fine, and I could only imagine, what that was like to I mean, I guess I got some of it as a kid, but as an adult, I wouldn't even know what that's like.
Yeah, it was interesting, I think. Cell phones were like barely a thing. And South Korea is more advanced technologically than the US, and it was then, and I think it still is now. So like, everybody had cell phones and they were pretty like people were watching TV on their cell phones
Wow.
in 2005 in South Korea. I don't know that it was like high quality, but the phones are really nice. And so that yeah, I think it was an interesting time. There was the internet, so there were a lot of travel blogs, so I could like learn about places that I traveled like through online things, but not like cell phone, not, I wasn't using my phone to navigate. I still had to like get directions on how to go from place to place, like based on landmarks or maps or something like that. So it was a really different time. And so, I mean, I think it's an advantage that I've been able to travel like that. And then also now, obviously, I travel with a cell phone with my Google Maps open and I'm wandering around. I could do it both ways, right? But it was a really different time for sure.
Yeah, kids listening to this, you didn't have GPS on your phones. Google
No,
Maps wasn't a thing. We had to have a Garmin, or something like that, and it was a separate device that you
yeah,
had like rigged into your car somewhere, and the maps were downloaded. So you might go to, there was no traffic. It didn't, update you on what was going on. It just simply told you how to get there, because before those, it was MapQuest.
yeah, and you had to print it off.
You printed your directions, which I
Yep.
used to do, and in most cases, if you're by yourself, you're screwed because you got to read the directions and hope you don't mess up. And then,
Yeah,
if you have somebody with you, they're reading you the directions, and then you're hoping they tell you where to turn when you need to turn.
it worked. It worked
It worked.
pretty well.
But I got to tell you, I am a huge fan of Google Maps and Waze
Yeah.
and all that, and being able to know that there's, and look, I've taken the same way to work, same ways to work, 11 years. I could probably drive there with my eyes closed. I always turn Google Maps on to make sure there's no accident on my route, and if there is,
Oh,
then I
sure.
know to pivot. Right? It's just
Yeah.
I'd imagine most people at this point, if not, have it just automatically loaded when you plug your phone into your car now. I mean, if you got a car that's relatively new. You have Apple Play and you have Google, whatever, CarPlay, and everything just connects. My wifey's car, you don't even need to plug it in. It just connects Bluetooth and automatically Google Maps comes up. And I'm like, yeah, I need that for mine. But,
That's
so
easy what 20 years will do.
I know, right? So what's a decision like that at 22? You're a kid. What was that like for you? Because, not many people are just gonna be like, all right, I'm just gonna move to a totally different country. And it's not like you chose something glamorous, right? Like an Italy, a London, like something like that. You went to South Korea, which is even more of a culture shock because I do think that, South Korea, Japan, like their cultures and the things that they do, they're definitely way more advanced in technology with a lot of things. And I think that they're just the things that we do here that we think are normal are ass backwards in half the world. So what was that decision like for you?
I don't really. I just knew I needed to do it. So I had a South Korean suite mate my freshman year of college, and
Mhm.
then I met another South Korean. Like I had just met some South Koreans, and then I didn't know this at the time, but there are places in Asia, South Korea included, where you can usually get a job teaching English if you have a bachelor's degree and you're a native English speaker. And so that's sort of that was it. That was the requirements for the job. So for me, it was not that hard. Like I knew South Koreans. They told me I could get this job. The company that I worked with, I checked with my South Korean friend. She's like, "Oh yeah, that's a big company in Seoul." So, like I got it vetted and everything like that. Like it was pretty good pay. But like something in me just like knew that I had to do that and that I wanted to do that. And it I had when people ask me about that, my answer is usually, well, it was really hard, but it was a difficult year, but it was worth it.
Yeah.
And really in a lot of ways changed the trajectory of my life. And like giving me the opportunity to see the world, and learn a lot about culture, learn a lot, like to study the language a little bit. I also visited China, Vietnam, and India while I was out there, so I got to see a lot more of Asia. And so it was tough, but it was worthwhile. So
Yeah, because guess what? When you become an older adult, you're not able to do that. You can't just
it's a
kind of
lot harder.
pick up and be
Yeah,
like, I'm gonna go to Australia today,
yeah,
or next week, and I live there for a while. Like I think if you are younger, it makes the decision. It's harder because a lot of times you don't have the money, you don't have the means, you don't have the what you need. But if you do, I feel like most people aren't ever like mad that they did it. Even if they have bad
absolutely.
experiences. I think
And
life is part of that.
it's not that it was easy. Like
Yeah.
it was hard, but it was absolutely worth it. So yeah, it was a good learning experience for me. The right time, and I took advantage of the opportunity. I sowed my wild oats, is what I will usually say.
Now, did you know any Korean? Did you learn it on the go? Was it like, did
Yeah.
you plan it?
I didn't, not really. My sweet mate, my freshman year, in the dorm, she sat down one night and she taught me the Korean alphabet.
Okay.
And so like it was literally 3 years after that I went to South Korea. And again, no cell phones. I didn't know, like there was no like Duolingo for me. But like the Korean alphabet is actually not that difficult. It's pretty easy to learn. And so when I landed, like I could read I could pronounce it. I could like read things, but I didn't know what they meant. I remember that was the year that Elf came out because I landed in like end of November. And so Elf was everywhere and it
That's
had
funny.
like Elf was advertised on all these buses, but they don't have the F sound in Korean. So they do the P sound instead. So it was I could read it and it said Elp. And I thought that was really funny. So I remember that like riding the limo bus into Seoul, like my first night. I was like, okay, I can read some things because my sweet mate taught me the alphabet 3 years ago, and somehow I retained it, and now it's helped me springboard into learning a little bit more of the language. And I don't remember much of it now. I can still read, but it's been so many years and I don't use it, so
It
it's
just goes
rusty.
away, right?
But I can still read like the alphabet is like stuck in my head. I can read it. So
Now, you're coming from Michigan in
yeah.
America. You go
Yes.
to South Korea. Gotta
Yes.
be an intense culture shock, right? And especially,
Yes.
2004, 2005. Talk a little bit about, what were some of the things that they did that kind of shocked you? Maybe there were some things that you did that kind of shocked, just a South Korean. Like, what's some of those things look like? And I'm sure it might be different now because that was also 20 years ago, but what was that like there?
Well, I was working in a school, so the kind of what happens is I worked in a private English language school, and so kids would come study English after school. So it was like an after school activity for them where they would come and learn English. So this is like kindergarten to middle school age kids. And what the structure was, I would teach and I'd have a Korean partner teacher. And so they would spend like 45 minutes with each of us. And so the setting where I worked, there were a lot of foreigners like me. And so it was pretty open. And my direct contact with the culture was through my South Korean coworkers who were used to working with foreigners. So I think that, made a difference, made it a little bit easier for me because they were used to me. We're used to Americans and Canadians and Australians doing weird things. And they were also very welcoming and very generous and very kind to us. And so that really helped a lot. And I think also probably they like adapted some of their behaviors in that setting too to make us feel more comfortable. They were interacting with us, and we didn't speak Korean very well, so they would speak in our language. So that kind of helped too. So I will often use the term bubble, like I lived in South Korea and but I did spend a lot of time in sort of my Western bubble with my fellow teachers, like mostly Canadian teachers and Australian teachers. Um, but I did work really hard to try to get out of that bubble. I tried my best to learn Korean. And I also tried my best to meet other South Korean people, do like language exchange and stuff like that. So, I certainly made plenty of mistakes. And I am sure, like, because, I was 22 years old. So it's like being a foreigner on top of being young. It was, an interesting time and I learned a lot. But I think, like, the thing that I have come to understand about cultural differences, and this is a big part of like what I talk about now too, is that people don't explain them very often.
Yeah.
So one thing that I was taught was that, there was the boss, the guy in charge of the school, and you're not supposed to look your boss directly in the eye. So that's like a cultural rule that they taught me. Nobody taught me why I was supposed to do that. There was no like surrounding like background or explanation as to why I'm not supposed to do that. But I was very clearly told, don't look kids straight in the eye. That's disrespectful. I was like, okay, fine. I can like not do that. But I didn't know why. And I was like, I was always worried that there was something else that I was doing wrong that was disrespectful.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't know. And so that these cultural differences, they're just not explained, right? And so I wish that some of this could have been explained better to me. And I wish that, oh, you could see that. I just wanted to see. My son is hanging out. So, um, so that was, I I think they protected me a little bit from like full on Korean culture contact. Um, which was kind of them. But then also I didn't get a lot of like description about what I was supposed to do and not supposed to do. It wasn't very in depth. It was very shallow. And so I kind of like didn't even know that I was doing this, but like since I went abroad, I've spent a lot of my life trying to like decode cultural differences and find ways to explain them.
Okay.
Because I had so many memories of like, well, just being confused and not understanding what was going on and like not being able to describe. Like, I am sure I did weird, offensive, strange things, but nobody told me, right? Like, it just wasn't spoken.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard to say exactly what I might have done wrong.
Did you ever find out like why it's disrespectful to look a boss in his eyes? I feel like for me, and I'm sure this is the American in me, I feel like it's disrespectful to me if they don't look me in the eyes. It means they're not paying attention. That's how
Exactly.
I think it.
Exactly. So, like, the concept of not looking someone in the eye is really strange, like to show respect. So it's like the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And like this is the trick with so many cultural differences is that it doesn't make sense to you. You're like, but I want to show you respect by looking you straight in the eye. Like that is a kind and respectful thing to do. Um, but it's like multiple things. But I have since figured it out and understand it a little more deeply. And just that, and also this also goes to some of the terms and the learning that I've done around cultural differences. So, hierarchy and power distance is much different in South Korea and a lot of Asian countries. And so the concept of like this person is high above you or this person is below you or something like that, hierarchy is really important. And then also how you show respect to people in the hierarchy is also a really important thing. And that can change, right? So if you may have like this high, complicated hierarchy, which exists in South Korea, but other places in the world, they have that as well. But how you treat that person who is high above you is always different. So in South Korea, you don't want to look directly at someone in the eye if they're very high above you, and it's just a sign of respect. So it has to
Interesting.
do with like the
The power
the power
dynamic.
distance and then like the actions that support like how to show respect.
That's interesting. Now I have a question. So I interviewed a couple who moved from America to Japan. And they told me something that was kind of a I don't know if it was a culture shock, but they like the work to life balance is a lot different. So
Yeah.
it's 5 o'clock, everybody in the office, like, for us, we just all disperse, go home. But everybody in Japan, it's like everyone's going out, you're getting drinks, you're drinking sake. And in a lot of cases, people are just getting, fucking loaded. And
Yeah.
then, taking a train, home and they're passing out. And they said they didn't, it's just different, in comparison. How South Korea is it similar in that? I don't know if it's just like in some of the Asian countries that they do that for. Maybe
Yeah.
it's kind of more specific to Japan.
There was a little bit of that. It wasn't every single day, but we did have certain times where we would go out as a staff, the mixed, the South Koreans and the Westerners, and we would hang out and drink and do karaoke rooms, norebangs. That was super fun.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that, but I didn't experience it to the extent at which I think it happens in Japan. But we had a lot of fun, that's for sure.
Yeah, you know what they always tell me we don't have it here, but it's like the this like the sushi belts. I really want to go to one, and I don't know
Oh
if there's
yeah.
one. And you know they're talking about how the sushi just kind of goes around, and they said it's pretty cool. So in Japan, every plate kind of has a like a code to it. So if you take a
Yes. Yeah.
plate, it'll automatically charge you based on what you
Mhm.
grab, which I thought is pretty cool.
It is cool. I've been to a sushi conveyor belt restaurant in Japan. And I've also been in one in Seattle, so they have them in the United States.
Yeah, I heard they're here. I just wish there. You know what? I bet you if
They're
I Google
rare.
it, there's probably something in Philadelphia somewhere.
It's
Which,
possible. It's not every major city. It's a pretty niche thing, I think, but it's worth looking because maybe not Philadelphia, but New York City probably. But they're
yeah,
pretty fun. Like it's just kind of a fun place to go. Yeah.
I love me some good sushi. It's
Same.
it's so good. And I'd imagine it's even when I was having this conversation, I'm like I couldn't imagine having like Japanese sushi. It's not like
Mm.
sushi here where like if you're getting it from Colorado, they're
Yeah.
not doing their own fishing. They have to buy the
Yeah.
fish, have it shipped in. It's a totally different experience. Um,
Yeah, you've always got to experience the food. And, Korean food is still different than Japanese food. But like
yeah.
Koreans have their own, fresh fish dishes, which I didn't eat very much when I lived there. But, there's whatever the food is, the seafood is, you gotta take advantage of it in that place for sure. And that whatever the food is in general, you just have to try the local food and it's pretty good in Japan for sure. And South Korea. I ate Korean food every single day. And 20 years later, I still crave Korean food and love eating it. So
So what was just some popular dishes in Korea? Is it like more spicy food?
yeah, Korean food is a lot spicier, especially compared to Japanese food. Japanese food is not as spicy, but South Korean food is, although not as like probably the spiciest food I've ever eaten is Thai food. I've never been to Thailand, but like
Yeah.
that's a whole nother level that I've not been able to achieve. But I ate everything in South Korea, and I really did get like a high um spicy food tolerance and still can eat pretty spicy foods, which I'm pretty proud of. But the food is really really delicious. Some of my well, like there's you got your street food. There's a food called tteokbokki, which is like rice cakes and like spicy sauce. I love that stuff. And then kimbap, which is like a vegetable roll. It looks like sushi, but it's not sushi, it's kimbap. And if you watch K-pop Demon Hunters, they eat it a lot. They eat kimbap a lot. So um it's uh it's pretty fun to see that. But yeah, Korean food is absolutely delicious.
I love spicy food, but I'm one of
Mhm.
those people where I need to be able to enjoy it, right? I don't want to eat something that's so spicy that it ruins the rest of my day. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to eat at like the one time I had flamethrower wings and I was probably like 20. And I was like, yeah, yeah, I'll eat one of those. I took one bite. I was crying. I was snotting. Milk didn't help. And it was the worst. And I was like that. I was like, I couldn't breathe for like 30 minutes. I,
That's
I don't,
scary.
I don't know why people do that to themselves.
I don't either. I will say Korean food is, to me, the perfect amount of spicy. So when I first got there, I was eating everything. I was like, I'm gonna try that, I'm gonna try that, I'm gonna try that. And not all of Korean food is spicy, but some of it is. You just have to figure it out which one is and which one isn't. And I would, order things and I'd be eating it and my nose would be running and I'd be sweating and I'd just be like, it is so good. I can't stop eating it. I just have to keep eating it.
Yeah.
And so that's what the Korean food is good. Like it's very delicious and flavorful.
I love me
Um,
some spicy
and
food. I love
and
it.
eatable. So it's edible, it's not too spicy. So I highly recommend it to anybody.
Now, what was it like coming home after living from abroad, right? So you talk about reverse
Yeah.
culture shock. How did
Mhm.
that hit you? And how do you think that reshaped kind of who you are? How
That
long did
was
you stay out
wild.
in South Korea?
1 year,
Okay.
which is not that long. A lot of people spend a lot more time in other places, but it was long enough to have an experience. But when I
Oh
came
yeah.
back, it was pretty intense, and confusing. Just very confusing for me. So I like looking back at my time in South Korea, I was just like, what just happened to me? Because I had finished college and I sort of killed time for the summer, and then I went straight to South Korea. So for me, it was like, well, now I'm back in the United States. Like, what am I going to do with my life? What was this experience I just had? It felt weird. Like, I definitely felt like not normal. Like, something's happening with me. I don't understand my identity anymore. Like, who am I? So I asked a lot of really big questions. And this is the time where I actually started learning about like cultural differences, cultural values, and I read a few books that just like changed my brain chemistry, as sometimes we say these days. um, it helped me like put words to my experience. So even just the concept of like power distance, and like direct versus indirect communication, these types of ideas and concepts, like describing cultural differences, like I mentioned before, like a lot of times people don't like, they can't describe culture, they can't describe it very well. And so when I came back and I started reading some of these books and learning more about cultural differences, I was like just shocked to understand and to know that you can actually describe these things. And it felt really empowering to me. And I still see all the time people like avoiding because they don't know how to talk about cultural differences. So they just don't talk about it, or they just sort of leave it like nebulous and unexplained. Like, oh, we can't explain American culture. It's too complicated. Like, we can't explain why we do that. I don't know. It's just the American way, or it's just the Korean way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like when I came back and I started reading these books and learning and exploring, I was like, you actually can describe this. And so again, spent like 20 years I lived abroad and then came back. I worked with refugees, worked in a lot of global settings, and I was able to learn more, build more experiences, understand different cultures, and be able to describe them. And like to be able to describe what I was experiencing and um, what was happening.
Yeah, so now that you're back, you're back, right? Let's talk about your company. Which is Beyond Tourism. So talk about its inception. What made you think of the name? What does that mean to you? And
Yeah.
what type of gaps are you filling, and addressing that you think, and you've probably at this point explained it, but fill us in on that.
So it was almost 2 years ago when I kind of had the idea. And I think, as many as happens with some people, like the original idea is not kind of what I'm doing now.
Mhm.
So originally my thought was I'm going to teach these cultural intelligence skills that I have. I'm going to teach these skills to people who are traveling internationally, either as tourists or for as expats.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's kind of how I started. And so the idea was, like when you are out in the world, you're out traveling. Um, if you're a person who wants to engage with the world, um, beyond the tourism mindset, right? Beyond being a tourist. So you want to connect with other humans, not just like wander around their city and take pictures, right? You want to get to know people. And then like the complications that come with getting to know people from a different culture. There's a lot of those. It's sometimes difficult to connect cross culturally. So, if you're a person who wants to connect with other people beyond being a tourist, beyond tourism, then I can help you do that. I can help you learn how to connect better across cultures. So that was kind of the inception. And I did that um, for a bit, and with mild success, guess, not super a lot of success. And so I've decided to kind of shift and then work with immigrants who are in the United States. Um, and I could talk about that in more depth, but it's not quite as interesting. But it's more like the skills are what's important, right? The ability to connect with other people from different cultures. Because honestly, like if you talk to any traveler, that like the best stories come from meeting people who are different from you and connecting with them on a deeper level. And I have those stories for sure. And a lot of people who travel have those stories too. And I have mixed feelings about keeping this name while I'm thinking about like switching and serving a different audience. But it's the concept is still there. Like we're connecting with each other in a way that's not tourism is not like the transactional nature of being a tourist is not in place. We are going to connect with each other as humans.
Yeah.
So that's sort of what I am the dream and that what's inspired me to start this business and keeps me going. I just think it's really important as the world is shrinking. You know what I mean? Like we can connect with each other so easily online, and we have to be able to understand each other across these cultural differences, especially if we want to achieve goals as a planet, and live in peace and help each other and, enjoy the best of humanity. Like we need these skills and these abilities to work across differences.
Yeah, and I think technology is a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
I think that with all the technology we have, you would think that we would have bridged that gap a little more because I could just Google stuff. I can just connect through Zoom with somebody from another country and I can have discussions. You would think you'd have a lot more people that have done that, but they don't. They just
Yeah, well,
connect with the
because
people here,
it
and
well, it's not a matter of like, let me just learn a thing, right? And so, and I'm a super nerd on this topic, which is why I'm studying it on a much deeper level. But it's not just about like, let me learn a thing about this culture, like that I can't look somebody in the eyes in South Korea. That is a part of it, right? There's certainly a part of it where you have to learn about the differences, but then there's also the part of it where like you have to inspect yourself and understand like your own cultural programming, right? I am an American. That is how I was raised, and I act a certain way and I believe certain things because I'm an American.
yep,
And if you don't like even like you can learn a ton of stuff about the world, but if you never come to terms with that, like and understand I am the way I am because of my cultural programming, and then you look at another person and you're like, well, they are the way they are because of their cultural programming. And it's not so much like I'm a bad person for who my cultural programming, they're a bad person because of their cultural programming, but you just like it's just different, right? And so to if you see that other person in their cultural programming and you're like, well, that's wrong, that's bad, then they can look back at you and think the same thing. And so the skill is really and what I teach is that cultural intelligence, which is similar to emotional intelligence and cognitive intelligence, this is a skill. Okay. This is a skill you can get better at. And so it takes like self reflection, it takes some learning, but also takes like the ability to look at yourself and understand I am this way just because of where I was raised. Right. And
yeah,
so it is learning, but it's also like self-reflective skills too, which is sometimes hard. Like, but I thought this was a part of me. Actually, everybody is like that in the United States. It's just a cultural trait, right? So coming to terms with like your cultural traits and who you are as a person really helps like it's a mindset shift about like how I'm going to act and interact with people who are different from me and who have that different cultural programming. I don't know if
yeah.
that makes sense.
No, it does, and I think that what you're talking about also transcends culture, but also you can look at it from gender dynamics, right? It's the same
Sure.
concept, right? You see a little
Yeah.
boy playing with a doll, and
Yeah.
maybe in your head you're like, oh, well, don't do that. You're a man, right? But that's something taught in our culture, in most
Absolutely.
cultures, right? I think it might be a little bit different today, but I still think, I mean, you look at gender reveals, blue and pink, right? You're not
Yeah, I
seeing,
know.
green and purple, and I'm not seeing purple and going, oh, that's a boy, So,
Yeah.
um, I think that
It's
it does transcend that as well, and I like what you're doing because I do think that especially we as Americans, all right, you need to look me in the eye here on YouTube. We need to get better at self-reflection, people. Okay,
yeah.
because not everything is everyone else's problem. Maybe it's you. So think about it. I'm pretty good with being with coming out and saying I'm wrong. Sometimes there's some things I'll some hills I'll die on for no reason, but in a lot of cases I'll be the first person to tell you, hey, I'm wrong. Or I'll admit, hey, yeah, let's talk about that, right? So, but I think we've made strides, but then we've kind of taken some back steps and we've made
Yeah.
strides. It's like this weird pendulum swing
Yeah.
of that. But what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, it I like what you mentioned about like the gender stuff because it's a social construct, right?
Yep.
Culture is just a social construct. It's just made up, right? We just make it up. And we make things up that are good and that are bad, right? Because just like with the eye contact example, in South Korea, look someone in the eyes, it's bad. In the United States, it's good. These are social constructs. There's absolutely no inherent value in eye contact, bad or good. It's just socially invented. And so, like, when it comes to, I think Americans, yes, like for an American to like step back and be like, I'm gonna look that person in the eyes because this is America and I'm gonna do it. This is the right way. And like, okay, like again, this self-reflection, like you were saying, that's not what it is. Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that much. What matters is, are you trying to show respect to somebody? Okay. If you're trying to show respect to somebody, then and they're from South Korea, you shouldn't look them directly in the eyes, no matter what it feels like for you. And interacting cross culturally, like if you're adapting and changing your behavior, which is what you should be doing, it does feel weird. And it felt weird to me to not look somebody in the eyes. But that's the point. Like you have to learn how to adapt, right? You have to adjust and you have to learn and you have to like be like, oh yeah, this does feel weird, but it's not a bad thing. So I do think that like Americans, especially the individualism is a little off the charts, right? Like people just are like, I think I know what's right. I know what's best. What's in the United States is the only thing that matters. And so there is sort of this like narrowing, I think, narrowing of what we think is good and right and like the right thing. Like look somebody in the eye, give them a strong handshake, and that's good. You know what I mean? Like that's socially constructed. It's made up.
My
Somebody
way or
just
the
made that
highway.
up.
That's
Right.
that
And so
thinking
like
doesn't help.
so I think the social construct thing just sheds a lot of light on, like it's all just invented and then we assign moral value to it. You know what I mean? And so I think like we all could stand to let some of that stuff go. And then show each other the respect that we need based on our cultural upbringing, which for some people is eye contact and a strong handshake, and for other people it's not. But let's show each other that respect.
Yeah, and it's different here too. Like, is your son, is he younger?
Yeah, he's
So
7.
yeah, okay. So he might not be in on this, but it's like if you were to talk to a kid and you're like, oh yeah, it's like 6 or 7, and they're like, I don't know if you've seen that meme, and it's like,
Oh yeah, I know
uh,
that. I know
s-
that well.
6, 7, right? And it's like, because we'll go to the wifey's families, and I'm kind of the fun uncle. I get to be the fun
Yeah.
uncle because I get to go home and we don't have kids, right? So,
Right. Yes.
so we get to joke around, and someone says 6, and I'm like 7, and then the kids start doing it. It's hilarious, right?
Yeah.
But you go. I'm sure if you go somewhere totally else and you do that, they're gonna just look at you like, "What are you doing?" Or if you look at an adult and do it, yeah, I'm sure some adults don't know, but they have kids. I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
So,
They
um,
know. Yes,
uh,
that was a weird cultural flashpoint.
all from a TikTok.
Yeah.
Um, Now you talk about invisible cultural rules, right?
Mhm.
What's an example of one, reverse where, an immigrant is coming into America that they might not know?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of those. Trying to think of one. I think that for a lot of people coming to the United States, um, and it depends where they're coming from too. Like there's big clusters of different cultures. So for some people, depending where they're from, it may not be an issue. But um, like when you first meet somebody and they're really friendly and really warm, right? Americans, especially when you're first meeting each other, you're like out in public, you're saying hello, how are you today? Uh, Americans like to express kindness through like this warmth, which is expressiveness, right? And so this is one of the many cultural values that I talk about, where like neutral, like a neutral face is where you don't show anything on your face. You're just kind of like very stoic and you kind of keep everything inside. And Americans are very warm and very expressive, especially at first. And a lot of times are willing to share a lot of information early on. Like, I'm going to tell you about my family and my grandpa and my grandma and stuff like that. And the small talk, right? And so the warmth of an expressive conversation and talking about like certain family or like personal things, um that comes across as like sort of aggressively friendly to some people, and so for some immigrants coming to the United States, it can feel really fake. Like you're not really this friendly. Like this is just a fake like montage. Like I don't even know. Like this is not real. Like whatever you're doing is not real because you don't have like you when you first meet somebody, you put up barriers and you're very tight-lipped and you don't communicate this way. But Americans do. And so sometimes it may confuse people. Like, why are they being so friendly? They must really want to be good friends with me. And that's not it.
Yeah.
It's small talk, right? And so then they get confused about, well, why am I not best friends with this person now? Like, because then we just talked about like our families and our history and stuff like that. But then Americans will walk away from that, you know what I mean? And so it's sort of but we're friendly. We want to be friendly, we want to be warm, we want to be welcoming. And so that's how we show that. And that's not that's the effective nature, the warmth is definitely that exists in some places, but not all places, and it can be very confusing.
Yeah, and it depends on where you're going. Like, so I'm from Philly.
It's true. Yeah.
A little different here in some spots.
Yeah.
And even me, like, and I went to Alabama, for a work trip, and, I'll never forget this. Me and one of my coworkers were walking down one side of the street where, we have our bags for the event, and someone across the street saw us and just started waving. We don't know this person. And I look at my buddy, I'm like, why the fuck are they waving at us? Like my first instinct wasn't to wave back. It was, what the hell, what's wrong with this guy? But like everyone from the South, a lot of them are very nice. And it's a lot
Yes.
different in the Northeast. We're a little apprehensive about people that are too nice or nice off the bat. You know, we have a little bit more of a hard exterior in some cases. So I
Yeah,
think it's funny that that dynamic can kind of play a little bit here too, depending on what state you're from.
it's
Um,
true. And like, I think that's interesting because, all countries can be like this. There can be a variety of different cultural like the culture presents in different ways in different parts of the country. So like culture, like the term culture is not like always national, right? It doesn't mean like the way I talked about it is not that's not the place every single state in the union, right? And even within a state, it might vary. But either way, it's a way to describe culture, and like the way you describe it is much less neutral, right? You're not That's not the effective warmth. It's like the neutral presentation. You're not going to connect with people right away. You're going to be a lot more direct communicators, probably very straight to the point, all that kind of stuff. So there's, yeah, we're different all over the country for sure. There's a lot of
Melting
underlying
pot,
similarities,
big old
but yeah,
melting pot.
it is. Yeah, it's interesting.
Now, let's get on to the fun stuff here. So you DJ every
I do.
Sunday, the language of music.
Yeah.
How do you feel discovering music from other countries has deepened the way you connect with people from those cultures? Do you think that that's helped you?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've been doing that for 13 years. I
Wow.
used to be on Friday mornings, but I recently switched to Sunday afternoons. So it's been a big part of my life for a long time. And sometimes I forget about it because I just do it every week, but it does inform a lot of like how I think about the world. I think that because of my show, and this is a volunteer position for my community radio station, so this is like a hobby more than anything, in
Yeah.
case anyone's curious. KZUM 89.3 FM. But I'm pretty good at geography. So I'm always like, well, what's that place? And then I have to look it up. And also like knowing what languages are spoken in which countries. I'm pretty good at that. And then when I meet someone from another country, I can very often ask them or like mention an artist that I like from their country. And then they're like immediately surprised. Like, wow, how do you know about the music from my country? And I love doing that. Honestly, it's so much fun because I it's like a demonstration that like I am aware of the world, right? I see things outside of my borders and I value things outside of my borders, the border of my country. And it shows that I have a respect for their country and their culture too. And so I get a lot of shocked looks sometimes, but they're also very impressed. And so I really like that. And I would say that, since I came back from South Korea, listening to music from other countries has always been important to me, learning about different countries, like what's the capital of this place? What's the river in this place? Or what body of water? What's the president? Like, what's the historical thing? You know what I mean? Like, the
Yeah.
information that we talked about at the beginning of the show that you can Google and you can find it out. That is interesting. Like music is interesting. It connects us to each other. When we can connect over something as beautiful as music. But it's really fun to be able to talk about that. And also I've gotten so many good recommendations. And it's a part of like my global mindset. I think I just live my life always just thinking about the broader world, right? So for me it's just kind of always there, I guess. I'm always just thinking and learning more about the world.
Yeah, music is weird. It transcends language. You know,
Yeah.
you can listen to anything and it could invoke an emotional response, right? And
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
it's a wild phenomenon, just music. And I could listen to a song and it could take me back to when I was 16. and I think it doesn't really matter if it's in English or not. There's certain things
I
that
agree.
it'll invoke into your brain, and who knows where in the brain it pulls that from, right? We could guess, but I still think that we don't know enough about it.
Yeah. Well, and
Um,
sometimes it's just dancing.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that's like sometimes it's just dancing. You may not know what's going on, and that's the case. I play a lot of music in other languages, but like I love music you could dance to, and that's the beauty of it. Like just go and dance. Everybody. It is a human experience, and that my show it's called The Language of Music for that exact purpose. Like music is a language that we can share as humans, and it's a really neat thing.
I love it. I love it. Now let's end with this. Um, Someone's listening to the show. Maybe they're an expat. They're an immigrant to the U.S. They're feeling lost or feeling frustrated. What's the first thing that you'd want them to know that would maybe
I
help
want
them?
them to know that it is absolutely normal to be lonely, confused, overwhelmed, um, maybe sometimes depressed, angry, sad. The experience of immigrating to another country, no matter where you're from or no matter where you go, is a very complicated and difficult experience. A lot of people use the word culture shock to describe any like little thing that's different. But culture shock is actually quite a difficult experience. And I could do a whole nother show talking about culture shock. But it's very painful. It's a very painful experience. And anyone who's spent any amount of time in like a lengthy amount of time in another country knows how bad it is. And so if anyone's listening, like that's the first thing I would say is like whatever bad feelings you have, this is normal. It's hard changing cultures. It's really, really hard. So
Especially if you're
go
doing it
easy on
alone,
yourself.
right?
Yeah, oh, 100%. Even like with other people around you, it can be hard because it's just really hard.
But it can be a very enjoyable experience, right? If you get through that
Yes.
initial crap.
Yeah, well, because it does bring a lot of skills, right? It brings the ability to adapt. It brings the ability and the reward of getting to know other people who are different than you, but somehow like you're able to connect through your differences, which I mean, there's so many really wonderful examples of that, and it's a really powerful thing. And so I think that in and of itself is a reward, is getting to know people who are different than you and connecting with them. Like, okay, well, you grew up in like Rwanda and I grew up in the United States, but here we are talking about something where we have in common. And that just is really powerful. Like to be able to connect on the human experience with someone, even if they're different than you. So the reward of pushing through, I think, and working through the differences and being kind and loving and respectful to the people who are different than us is always worth it.
I couldn't agree more. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's what makes us human, right?
Yes,
Is being able
absolutely.
to just bond on not just a language, almost like a molecular level, right? We're all
Yeah,
we're all humans, it's just we grew up in different areas, so it
yeah,
just changes who you are, and to a certain
yeah,
degree. But
it
look,
does.
this was a awesome conversation. I hope someone listens to this, and if you're an immigrant or an expat, it helps your day a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Um, can you plug away, Renee? Tell us about your company, where we could find it, if there's anything that you want my listeners to jump to.
Yeah, just the website, goingbeyondtourism.com. I have some social media that I'm not using too much these days, but Beyond Tourism or Going Beyond Tourism, you're going to be able to find me probably there talking about culture, and sort of trying to educate about culture and get us to think a little bit more about our culture. And then, so I have some services where I can support, especially like immigrants who've come to the United States. I have one particular cultural communication skills package that I offer. And then I can also support expats and teach them a lot about cultural differences and how to like tips on how to think when you're in and how to approach culture in a new place.
Awesome. Love it. Love what you're doing. My podcast is Drink O'Clock Pod on all socials. Drink O'Clock Podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. And let's do this again soon. It was a pleasure.
Indeed. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You have a great night.
On a stormy night where legends unfold, there's a podcast that's breaking the mold. Raise your voices, raise your glass high. Welcome to the Drink O'Clock Podcast. Let's fly. Oh, grab an old fashioned and join the fray. Raise your spirits, let the music play. From the corner pub to the dance hall floor. Drink O'Clock Podcast, we're ready for more. We're ready for more. With a mix of folklore and rebel cheer, we'll guide you through tales of whiskey and beer. From Irish shores to lands afar, grab your friends, it's time to raise the bar.